Breaking moments ago, a judge will keep President Trump's buyout plan for federal workers on hold for now. The feds call it a humane off-ramp. Unions argue that Congress hasn't signed off on the money to make good on this offer of 8 months of pay. President Trump revoking more security clearances, including for New York Attorney General Letitia James. She is one of the state's AGs suing over DOJ engineers' access to a government payment system. Obviously, she has a history with the president as well. Now, the president says that revoking these clearances is not retribution.
People that we don't respect, if there are people that we thought that were breaking the law or came very close to it in previous years, we do it. And we've done it with some people. We've done it with Biden himself. We think our country is not as safe if you gave him clearance. We don't think he knows what he's doing.
So that was the president en route to the Super Bowl yesterday. Let's bring in Fox News legal editor Kerri Urbahn, former counselor to Attorney General Bill Barr. Kerri, good to have you here. So a lot of things popping. But first, your reaction to the federal judge maintaining the block on this offer to federal employees to leave and get an 8-month payout.
Well, he should unblock it, ultimately. And Martha, I think what's really unconstitutional in this entire situation is the fact that the judiciary is blocking a co-equal branch of government, the executive branch, from exercising a legitimate function, which is to address a bloated government workforce. You know, this argument that, well, Congress hasn't appropriated the funds. What does anyone talk? I don't understand that at all, because the positions are funded. And so if the argument is, well, the government is only funded through March 14th, that applies to everyone in the federal government. And by the way, there's a little secret, which is that everyone always ends up getting paid after government shutdowns. I worked through a government shutdown. I remember it well. And so if that's their only argument, it doesn't hold any water because these positions are funded. So Congress has already appropriated that funding, and they're not forcing anyone to resign. No one's being fired.
Exactly.
They have an option to accept that offer or not. And so, again, this resistance to the government trying to address inefficiency and, you know, clean things up is really quite remarkable.
Yeah, which, as the president says, is exactly what he was elected to do. And you point out, if they take this buyout, it's an absolute choice. They can either return to D.C., to their offices, and stay and keep their jobs, or they can get paid for 8 months for not working. Let's put up these security clearances of the people who have had them revoked. Does the president have the legal right to revoke the security clearances of these people, Kerri?
No, I don't think anyone who abuses their position or demonstrates blatant disregard for facts or just reckless judgment should have a security clearance, right? A security clearance means that you have the judgment and the temperament to handle that responsibly. And we could go through all of those people and give examples as to, unfortunately, why they don't have that. And I would say, notably, Letitia James, she did abuse her position as Attorney General in New York. And the reason we know that she did is because she applied the law against Donald Trump in a way that had never been applied against anyone else in the state of New York. That, on its face, is a problem and should raise question marks in everyone's mind. So, of course, it's interesting, too, that she's the one leading the crusade against the DOJ staff, and that, you know, them trying to block the audit of the Treasury Department, which, by the way, Martha, I actually think that's the craziest of all of the judicial decisions thus far. The fact that they are saying that Treasury employees, political appointees, can't analyze and inspect their own data is ridiculous. And blocking an audit, I mean, this is ridiculous. This is like such a proper function of the executive branch. I don't know what else could even come close. And so it's notable, though, of course, that Letitia James is the one leading those 19 attorneys general in that lawsuit.
Absolutely. Kerri, thank you very much. Kerri Urbahn, always great to see you.